The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall continue to follow me all the days of this protracted experience of death, and I will dwell in the house of the most intelligent power, source, and force of love and creation forever. What's happening? Oh shit, what was that? Benton here. Yep, add it to the 20,000 reasons. They say, what are you talking about? The 20,000 reasons why most people would never do this job. I got in the door to get unloaded at 5:30 a.m. It is now 12:30 p.m. And that may sound strange or unusual or, oh my goodness, how could this ever happen? It's normal. Doesn't happen often, but it's normal. Meanwhile, when they loaded me in near Atlanta, only took about 2 hours. It's a bunch of like area rugs, I guess, carpets, like rolled up area rugs. So they have to be loaded and unloaded, manually. I don't know what kind of equipment they use for such a thing, but clearly the folks at this here warehouse distribution center, they ain't into it. They're not interested in unloading this type of load, and especially if everything else, all the other trucks are just normal palletized merchandise, right? People, when they wander around inside the warehouse, they can just go presumably like unload the other trucks, right? And then, oh well, as long as somebody is pretending to unload my trailer, so I get to sit here. So here we sit, staring at a flashing red light that presumably will turn green at some point. I call this being kidnapped. Hypothetically, the company told me when the trailer's empty, I'm supposed to go to the company shop in Chicago, the greater Chicago area. I think I'm like an hour away. And then, of course, by the time I get there, it'll be so late in the day. Uh, however long it takes to get the truck worked on, depending on what all they decide they want to fix on it, the truck and the trailer. That may or may not get finished today. And if I can stay in the truck, not a big deal. Although, let's say they work on it for 4 or 5 hours. I may or may not be allowed to stay in the truck. I have no idea. May end up in a hotel again. No, just don't know. Don't know what time I'll be leaving here. I don't know what time I'll get to the shop. I suspect the company knows that this is a load that is known to take many hours because they haven't even reached out to, have me go check. I went one time and checked with the guard shack just in case the company contacted me with any questions. All they're ever going to say is, "Well, you need to go check what's taking so long." So, I have to go do that at least once. and I'm on a day rate. I guess it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. But then we have the wrinkle where I had my first ever DOT recordable accident. Thankfully, no, the truck's not damaged and nobody got injured. And I did not receive any tickets, but either way, it's possible that they're no longer going to employ me, although I doubt that. I doubt I would lose my job over this. It's possible. At this point, all I would love to just fly to LA and stay in an Airbnb for about a month, and I could use with some R and walking around and you know doing my thing. But that probably won't happen. I doubt I'm that lucky. And how many folks can do this sort of job and not need to take control and not be in a heightened emotional state all day long, in limbo. Trucker. I'm in trucker limbo hell. And thankfully, I made it to Walmart yesterday. Although it's funny, this morning I almost, since they have us detached from the trailer, uh, I almost went to Walmart earlier. And at this point, I'm not sure it would even matter. But of course, I'm being messaged now by the company. Oh, and part of me going live is I figured that either they would just, as soon as I went live, I would get the green light or something would happen. Of course, what's happened. Uh, um, Give me just a second. Well, hopefully that's enough info, although most likely they're going to request me to go check again. So it's funny because I've been sitting here all day thinking about going live, but then thinking, well, surely it can't take too much longer. So, but again, within 8 minutes, 9 minutes of going live, something happened that may very well, cause me to need to stop the stream or do something. So, sort of, in a way that's sort of Murphy's law. If somehow, manufactured something has happened, right? And I'm not saying I'm ending the stream, but funny how the timing of that worked. I've been sitting here for, let's see, what's that, 7 hours, and absolutely nothing has happened. And then within 10 minutes of starting a live stream, something happened. Yep. Oh, okay. Want me to keep them posted? All right, will do. Sounds good. And I think they're used to dealing with angry truckers. And I'm just like, look, it doesn't matter to me. I live in the truck and, whatever. But the company at some point is going to want me to come check. So I figured I might as well come check now instead of waiting for them to ask me to come. Because there's no version of the company contacting me and asking what's going on. If I can't respond with, well, I went and checked, the first thing they're going to say is go check. They've got me trained, so I already know. Well, it's been 3 hours or 4 hours. So I already know to go check, even if I'm almost 100% certain that going and checking isn't going to do anything. Although every once in a great while, it's like, oh yeah, you're already unloaded. I guess they just forgot to unhook you from the dock, and to make the light turn from red to green. That happens, but not that often. But yeah, fascinating dynamics, certainly. But what I think is going to happen is this shift is fucked with it all. They're going to fuck with it, and they're going to leave it to the next shift, who is just going to do whatever they're going to do. Right? It's like, well, they'll either, if they're worth a shit, they'll finish it right away, or you know they'll figure, okay, we'll just take our sweet ass time. And so I might be. I mean, this could be 12 hours just sitting here waiting to get unloaded, and then I'm not going anywhere. At that point, it's like, well, I'll be at the shop in the morning. I don't know what to tell you. There's a truck stop up the road. That's where I'm going. And it is amusing from the context of this idea that truckers keep America moving, and then sometimes in the YouTube comments I see people praising truckers, and they bring us everything that we need and this and that. Man, it is not reflected in the working conditions. And so, in a way, all this talk of foreign drivers and this crackdown, the English language proficiency. I mean, realistically, in the long run, it's always going to be about, who is crazy enough or desperate enough, who's also capable of doing the job, by the way, who's crazy enough or desperate enough to actually do the job, whether they're from here or from other countries, or what languages they are fluent or proficient in. Businesses, as we've talked about, corporations will have access to labor at the price of their choosing, and that labor will be performed under conditions prescribed by, in this case, the government and the corporations, which, I would argue America certainly operates, at least in part, a level of corporate fascism, Benito Mussolini style corporate fascism, from the perspective of the state. Everything, including the workers themselves, are property of the state. And I'm certainly no proponent of collectivism or communism. However, and I'm sure this doesn't happen in practice. So, and it doesn't matter to even talk this way. Some folks will construe my commentary as if I'm pro communism and anti capitalism. The point I'm making is that from the perspective of Marxism, that's about the workers owning the means of production. I'm not calling for that necessarily. Um, I'm talking about the system as it exists in the U.S., especially for dry van, long haul truck driving here in the U.S. Um, yeah, it's fascinating, and it's an opportunity for me to work on some of my spiritual practices, and you know, um, there seems to be some further healing. I've regularly talked about, the healing of the large intestine in particular, and just being able to be here for this a period of time without experiencing annoyance or frustration. And in fact, in some ways, this is what my body needed. I recognized this, pretty early this morning. Um, and I didn't do anything yesterday. Got here Saturday and then did a 34-hour restart. So, um, and then the daylight savings time, happened. I'd totally forgotten about that. But This morning, that's one of the first thoughts I had when I got out of the rack was that I could tell that I needed to just sort of lay around and not do much of anything. And it's funny how that worked out. Just maybe not in a way that I would have expected, you know. So yeah, that's the thing. As far as anything else, and this is not my normal time for streaming. This is already quite late into the day for Mr. Benton here. Um, you know, Especially in the winter time. Although I guess is it still technically winter? But coming out of the winter time, it's not at all unusual that I would be sleeping, 4.5, 5 hours from now. So I'm over it, man. I could just go to sleep right now. Although that would be too early, and I wouldn't. Right? But that would fuck my schedule up. Actually, then I would for sure be awake by like 8 p.m. tonight. But I could at least take a nap. Yeah, the healing's going good. Certainly, this is without getting into specifics. Lots of stuff going on down in the lower intestines. It's all happening in a good way. So, but yeah, I'm part of me's hoping they say, hey man, thank you for your efforts, and we appreciate you trying to stick it out with us. But hell, you've already attempted to quit 3 times, and now with this going on, we figured this is probably a good time to. They like to call it parting ways in the trucking industry. Hmm. And we got $100 in a barrel for oil. Did y'all see that? Um, hmm, hang on. Sorry. Which sure, people are freaking out about the gas prices that, we're going to have even higher gas prices. However, the reality is that in a consumer based society, in a consumer based economy, um, you know, during the boom times or the time when people are able to earn money and spend money, when the bubble is expanding, that's typically when oil goes up. And I find the timing of this I find quite fascinating. Coming off of what I have to assume was a cold winter in the oil fields, especially North Dakota, and if oil continues to climb and it stays elevated, then these oil companies are really going to crank up their efforts, and just that will stimulate the economy. Just the amount of money that will be earned. Regular working folks earning wages in the oil field. There's tons of people who have experience or would go try it out for the first time. And this seems to be the perfect time of year, right? It's you can bring new people in, and they can, a lot of them are going to wash out, but then by the time winter rolls around, if oil's still, let's say oil's 120 a barrel or higher next winter, then surprise, surprise, you'd have people, there would be enough people in the oil field, um, to keep working all winter. So that, I mean, I'm not calling for that. I'm saying it sort of makes sense. And, with this idea of, again, going official fiction with the narratives of economy and politics, I would assume that the so-called administration would be looking for ways to uh, stimulate the economy. And so it certainly looks like they need as much tax money flowing in as possible. Um, and that would, just the oil field side of it. And then, all of the spending and all of the other businesses across the country that would get the benefit of all of that spending, Um, your hardworking men who will go out and try to make, as much money as humanly possible during the boom time. I mean, that's, as far as I can tell, that's what an oil boom is. And I'm not saying I would or I wouldn't go do some of that. All I'm saying is it would be an option. Because at this point, I have enough money. I don't even want to call it saved. I have enough fuck me money. I could just fly my happy ass to LA, um, and hang out for a month in an Airbnb, affordably. Although it is kind of annoying because I was looking at flights for tomorrow and they're already, this morning you could get them for like the cheapest ones were like $188, and now it's like almost all they're selling out. So what's left is like $400. There's a few left for $200, but they're all going pretty quick. I guess I could afford to spend more if I needed to, but it's kind of interesting. But then again, the uncertainty of the job, right? It's like, for all I know, they're going to have me keep working. And it's like, well, at this point, with this incident on my record, um, I can't really, if I quit this job, I can't really, especially with my criteria, it'd make it pretty much impossible to get another job in the short term, at least doing long haul, living in the truck. And, one of the attractions I've had to trucking is when I look for these jobs, I've got a clean record, or I did. So, it certainly weakens my position seeking employment. So I don't know. It's an incentive to stick it out on this job. And I think they would probably, although I wouldn't, obviously I would have to get a different truck. I'm pretty sure I could just take the whole, like July and August off and, come back and still work for the same company, assuming they're not getting rid of me. And that's the hilarious part. For all I know, they're just wanting to make sure they get their truck and their trailer back to Chicago before they're like, yeah, man, it's been real, but bye. Which I think I'm actually in favor of that at this point. Earlier, I've been here so long, um, I sort of packed my bags, which is, yeah, if I end up in a hotel tonight, I need to have enough of my things with me, although I'm sure some of the stuff I normally use would get left behind. But at this point, maybe another 30 minutes or so, sort of double checking and making sure that I packed up everything I would want to take. I'd be ready to take an Uber to the fucking airport, man. Again, that would be my preference, but probably not going to happen. Probably not. I'm not that lucky, Ryan, although I am. But, yeah, food for thought. Hmm. And I'm just sort of curious at this point. I read some of the Google reviews, and there were definitely some people that came in the morning time and were here, into the evening, and then uh, and I'm almost certain that every one of those loads is an entire truckload of carpets, like I have. And one person even took a picture of their trailer after it got unloaded, and the people that unloaded it, they just left like they left some of the carpets in there. And I don't know, at that point, did the driver just say fuck it and leave? I mean, I don't know what he did. Uh, I won't be doing that clearly, but what happens? What happens if they give me the green light and I hook up and start, I pull away and there's still freight in the trailer, you know? So I don't know, man. This is, the fact that this is even how people would be treated. Like, again, it's the 20,000 reasons why the vast majority of people would never do this job. It's dehumanizing on some level. I'm just sitting here, all fucking day long. It's not like anybody's coming and checking on me or anybody's like, oh man, we're so sorry. And, blah, blah, blah happened. And half our crew didn't show up. And, nobody's even, they're just, it's just basically like, fuck you, buddy. Sit out there like the white nigger coolie slave that you are, sir. Like, all right. Well, I guess, I live in this motherfucker. So what's the difference, right? But knowing my luck, they'll, well, and again, I have good luck, but, an hour from now, if they give me the green light, then I pretty much have to go to Chicago at that point. My preference, even if I'm going to keep working, my preference would be that they take so fucking long that I just end up at the truck stop. So $257 to, drive less than an hour total and be in the truck all day after being in the truck all day yesterday and getting paid yesterday as well. Yes, I can deal with that. But I suspect that what'll happen is they'll finish me up in time to head to Chicago and go play in the rush hour traffic to then get to the company shop just in time to have them start on the truck and then me not be able to. It'll end up in the shop overnight. Depending on what they're doing, right? I might be able to, they might be able to get to a stopping point where I could at least go park on the street. Um, or I'll then have to Uber it to a hotel. And at that point, it's like, fuck it. Why not just go to if I'm going to check out of a hotel in the morning, I mean, once I get to the hotel, why not just go ahead and book a flight for tomorrow? Why not go ahead and book an Airbnb for tomorrow and just piece the fuck out, right? I mean, it's almost like it's lining up to happen that way. And once I spend the money and get on the flight, you know, uh, but then, like I said, with that incident on that accident on my record now, yeah, I could quit this job and get another job, but it makes it basically I would end up working for a company um, that wasn't able to meet my criteria because at this point I'm pretty sure I'm just simply not willing to. I'm not going to be creating an LLC or an S corp to get paid on a 1099, and I'm almost certain I'm not going to work on a W-2. So the chances of finding a company that doesn't want me to run all over the West Coast and will pay me 1099 to my Social Security number and um, is able to hire me with a recent accident. Say it's all pretty low. Although who knows? I mean, I do sort of speak English. Uh, I'm technically fluent in the language, so who knows? Not sure I'd be willing to test those waters in the first place. So yeah, that's what's going on with old Benton here, and I don't really want to get into the details of the accident. It was fairly mundane, and like I say, it could have. It's one of those things that could have been really bad, and fortunately, it wasn't. But it happened. It's really all I can say about it right now. Yeah, you know, I've got my own opinions and thoughts about what may or may not have precipitated it, but regardless, I certainly could have prevented it if my behavior had been different. So even if what I suspect is true, maybe is true, even meaning some measure of people intentionally sort of steering things in their favor to cause such an incident for purposes of trying to get a settlement, which does happen. Let's not forget. Then it's still on me to be on the lookout for such folks. So in my world, it's like, well, if that's what they did, and if they beat me, they beat me. I mean, that's just what it is, and I've accepted it. And I've been driving a truck long enough that it's, while technically possible for me to have made such a blunder, it seems quite unlikely. And I do tend to have a sixth sense when somebody's in my the blind spot of the track closest to the tractor. And now this person being a truck driver on his way to work is even more suspicious because he wasn't in a truck. And he absolutely, with 100% certainty, knows that he's not supposed to be in that space next to a big rig. Like, that's a big no-no. And most truck drivers just won't let a car, once they know there's a car in that space, they just will not let them continue to ride there. Now, if it's just traffic, there's nothing you can do. This was not that. So, and you just never know, man. You never know. You never know when people are drunk or on drugs or any of that stuff. So, I don't know, or have money problems. Be willing to risk their own safety. There's a lot of people. Might be surprised. I know when I was a kid, we were out in Florida, and there were some Jehovah's Witnesses we went and stayed with, I think, or at least visited. I don't think we would have stayed at their house, but we visited them, and the man had a hang gliding accident and lost his hand, and later on it came out that he on purpose did all of that to collect the insurance. I mean, there's people who will risk their lives and their safety to get money out of insurance. So I don't know. Look, I have no way of knowing, but so very sus occurred. So I'm willing to. Well, I have no choice but to take the L. But the fact that the officer did not even consider giving me any tickets. Although some of that is I do represent myself quite well, and remained calm and cooperative, and did not make anybody's job more difficult. But yeah, certainly no better than to tell on myself while sort of sub-communicating. Yeah, well, and the officer you could tell he was no dummy. So it was a state trooper. So it's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure he had an idea that some of the things I was doing that I'm technically not supposed to be doing. Maybe slightly above the speed limit, right? Maybe not in the proper lane. Maybe in a lane that trucks were not legal to be in at that time, possibly. So I'd say that's a pretty strong indicator that I was not issued any citation. So much so that I didn't want to bring it up, but I actually asked the guy. I was like, so just so we're right before I left, I was like, well, I said, I'm not fishing, but I just got to be clear, no tickets. He's like, no tickets. I was like, all right. Of course, that's what the owner of the company was like. Are you sure you didn't get any tickets? Like, nope. And in fact, I didn't want to bring it up, but I even asked the guy right before I left, and he confirmed no tickets. So, some people will try to lie, and some drivers, they'll try to lie or make themselves look less guilty or less bad. I find it easier to just pretty much tell what happened. It's like, look, man, this is what it was, and this is what it is, and rip the fucking Band-Aid off. There's really no point in, trying to make excuses or this or that. I said, man, it's just easier if I just tell you what I know happened, and while simultaneously not saying anything to the any of the other folks that might make it worse on the company. And just that, man, the idea of the dead flesh and this dead world, and the cannot serve two masters, and at some point it just looks like to me like the writing's on the wall that I'll be leaving regular employment at some point, probably never to return. And as I like to say, Jesus, after being baptized and beginning his ministry, did not work a job, did not accrue tax liability, and did not handle money. Say, well, you ain't Jesus. Well, again, what I am is the way, what I am is the truth, what I am is the life. So, I'm not talking about Benton, the person, or the personality, or the psyche, right? And oh yeah, Tommy's channel. If anybody knows Illuma Tommy, I just happened to, his channel got deleted, so his new channel, which I've forgotten the name of, but I was listening, and there was a long time panel verser from the so-called truth community. This Lou Bass was on there, and it's being kind of mean to old Tommy, and I didn't like that, so I joined, clicked the link to set old Lou straight, and was on there for about an hour, I think, probably. That was Saturday when as towards the end of my driving shift. So that was interesting. That's out there for anybody that knows how to find Tom's channel. But I was addressing some of those themes, and I need to go back and listen to it myself, because I was really able to pin Lou down on some of the assertions he was making around the nature of God and the nature of reality, and based on this these understandings based on the true knowledge of self / self-realization, and understanding what I am, I'm able to understand and know what this place is, or more correctly, what this place isn't. Right. And then it makes a lot of sense why this world is often referred to as a world of abundance. It's like, no, this world is a lack of abundance. There is no value here. There is no external meaning here. There is no abundance. There's illusion, delusion, money, aka death. Delusion is dead. Money's dead. What is illusory certainly can't be said to be living, right? Like it or not, the wonderful nature is dead. The physical flesh is dead. And it's not important that anybody, believes what I'm saying. It's not a matter of belief. That's what it is. I mean, that's just the nature of things, right? And this idea of human nature, and the gaslighting and the programming around viewing that as if it's humanity is imbued with certain characteristics, and those are desirable characteristics. Well, no, they're not. It's the spirit of what I am, right? That's the value and the substance, and supreme beingness, right? But the idea that the humanity has some sort of, the human race has an inborn, love and tolerance and acceptance. That's just not the case. The dead flesh is wicked and depraved and craven, and just all negative characteristics. Again, the lack of positive characteristics, and that's what death is. Death is the lack of life. It's to start out with assertion or proposition being creation and expanding life. Again, authority, value, abundance, and it's to remove all of that, or to imagine, or to, again, imagine, right? To create via the subversion of the creative force of what I am, create a delusory realm, and to continue to perpetuate these illusions. And it's to experience something that's not possible, only via imagination and delusion and subversion, to experience lack of abundance, right? To exist in this place at a level of subsistence, which is to survive on a minimum level of resources. And, surprise, surprise, let's just assume I do end up continuing on in this job, right? In some ways, how much of that is sort of, fraudulently manufactured in such a way to sort of, provide just enough of a so-called life to kind of keep me in the rat race. At this point, I have no plan. I haven't filed an income tax return in like 25 years. At this point, I have no plans to ever pay one more dime of federal income tax. And like I said, when Caesar's agents show up and are like, hey, man, what about these taxes? And I'm just like, well, I mean, you're welcome to whatever's in my, I mean, I'm not going to sign it over, but clearly the government can seize my funds out of my account anytime it wants. It's like, did you talk to the criminal? Go talk to the bank. Go talk to the criminal bank, and I'm sure they'll happily let you have, whatever few $1,000s I have in an account right now. Maybe it's more than that, but maybe maybe more is about to be cashed out. But that's not really the point. But it's fascinating dynamics. And Lou wanted to get a lot into what he believes, and I'm just like, yeah, what's that have to do with anything? It's kind of your problem. I'm talking about what is here, sir, and consensus. Like more and more, the more I think about these things, and the more, and it's not just the intellectual or the pseudo intellectual or the thinking my way through these things, because of how my mind works and my psyche. I have to put things into concrete terms uh, in order to deal with them. But it's mind, body, and spirit. So a lot of what I've been doing lately, um, and for the last several months, is tied up in the spiritual side to facilitate further healing and restoration in the name, by, for, and with the power and meaning in the name of the Lord Christ Jesus. Jesus Christ is Lord. See, that's a phenomenon. It's not a person, right? It's not a personality. It's a phenomenon. Okay. And to be in this seemingly limited, again, dead human form it sort of necessitates, through thought and logic and reason and but also intuition, and also sublime and serendipitous spiritual experiencing and perceptions as well. And that's probably not the best way to phrase that, but it works. uh, Sort of this confluence of all of this, um, to bring forth and manifest, based on what I know I am. And again, yes, capital I space capital A, capital M, and as we know, that's typically a word for God. Well, again, and when I say God, I must say air quotes so-called God, because, you know, that's not just to use the word God without a specific context. Like, what are air quotes we even talking about at that point? But, if I Google what is I am, is air quotes capital I am, um, religion. Probably got to go religion. Mm. And that's a movement. So, what does I am refer to in spirituality? The fact that I'm not even getting a straight answer is kind of interesting. Yeah, see, it's Google won't even answer. Google won't even answer. It just refuses to directly answer the question. Here we have a link, though: metaphysical meaning of I am. Aha, metaphysical meaning of I am. And I'm not saying this is correct. I'm saying this is what is written on this one website. But it seems to be Bible. It's just World English Bible, metaphysically interpreted, whatever this is. Fillmore Faith. I've never heard of this, but the Fillmore Study Bible. I don't know. I am spiritual identity, the real or Christ mind of each individual, the I am being. God is I am. See? So it's like, Benton's saying he's God. No, because Benton would understand that air quote so-called God, depending on the context, is not a person with a gender. So you can't get to, well, Benton saying that he is God. Well, you can't get there. There's not a bridge to that, and you cannot build a bridge to that. Because that's backwards, that's inverted. And I definitely caught Lou in several inversions. which was also fascinating. In the past, I wouldn't have understood those well enough to call somebody out on it. It says here, God is I am, and man his offspring. But see, whoever wrote this, I already can't get with that, because why are we saying God is I am, but then now within the same sentence to refer to God as a he? See, I don't, there's no, outside of the Bible or other scripture, there's no basis for that. That's the he and the she, that is dead and belongs to this delusory world. That's just as dead as the flesh. It's just as dead as the birds of the air. It's as dead as the grass. It's as dead as the oceans and the streams and the mountains. None of it contains life whatsoever. None of it. There is nothing physically living, at least not here, and I suspect anywhere whatsoever. But again, speaking to you in this form, in this place, right? I can't address, and I don't have the brain power, thankfully, because a lot of people who do have the brain power end up going fucking crazy as a result of such ponderance. As old layperson Benton, with his white pedestrian IQ, doesn't have to concern himself with that quite helpfully. So yeah, but so let's define consensus, because consensus, I'm realizing, is a huge part of the weaponry of this realm against makes that which makes an enemy of what I am. It's a big part of that functions at the level of consensus. Number one, a process of decision making that seeks widespread agreement among group members. Number two, general agreement among the members of a given group or community, each member of which exercises some discretion in decision making and follow up action. And that is the masses. The thing is, the masses, they leave their mother's matrix, their womb or matrix. Again, womb and matrix are synonyms, and enter into this matrix. And, it's my contention that the vast majority of all children are then pretty quickly sacrificed to Moloch's machines of industrial and post-industrial society, and then raised up that way, right? Having been sacrificed, again, and it totally lines up with this, what I am is the way, what I am is the truth, what I am is the life. It has to be that way in the context of the delusion to then sacrifice that being in such a vulnerable state of a baby. The sacrifice has to be of that high of a value. And look at this idea of Christ dying for, quote, our sins. That's not possible. That's a violation, because what Christ represents symbolically is of such supreme value that the idea that would be exchangeable for the lack of value, aka death, makes no sense. That can never happen. Christianity, as practiced in the United States, is impossible, based on the notion of Christ sacrificing himself to redeem the sins of this world. That's simply impossible. So, now we get into the fact that the Bible is filled with lies and contradictions on purpose. Absolutely it is. At least the KJV in the English language. That's just the facts. That's indisputably true. People can have opinions and feelings, and many people have been indoctrinated and brainwashed. That's fine. They're wrong. And that's where the consensus comes in, is because, why do people hold those views? Well, it's in large part because they were born into a world of consensus, where all of these structures and beliefs and goings on are mostly validated by the fact that they seem to be happening, right? Because when we look at the second definition of consensus, it says each member of which exercises some discretion in decision making and follow up action, which means part of it being part of society operating at the level of consensus means as a member of society, I can't be made to participate in the consensus. Now, as an individual, I can't stop the consensus. I can't. Most likely, it's impossible to change the consensus level behaviors. But because of what's considered to be free will, I can't be forced into it. See, and again, now we're also back to what I am can't be enslaved. See, that's not possible. You can't. It's a phenomenon that cannot be enslaved. And again, if what I am could be enslaved against its will, it would then prove itself to not be the genuine article. And at that point, guess what? It's no longer a worthy sacrifice. See? And then it's no longer high enough value for what Moloch would accept. See? Moloch, make no mistake, this idea that bankers always pay themselves first, and we look at the economy. The function of the economy is to make rich people richer every new moment into perpetuity, and it never fails to achieve its purpose. Like this, Moloch ain't taking no shorts, y'all. He'll only take the best of the best for a sacrifice. That pagan deity, Moloch, industrial and post-industrial society, it's only interested in symbolic representations of the real thing, right? But encased in death, see, within the context of death, see, within a context of death. So in a world of inversion, of course, the very context of death, it's inverted and it's referred to as this life. This ain't life. This is not life. This is death. The newborn baby, spiritually, right? The same as what I am. What I am is no different than it was when it left its mother's womb and was shortly thereafter sacrificed to Moloch. No change. It's the same. See? It still represents supreme authority, highest value. The question is, within the context of death, does it express as a descendant of the original Adam? Adam was made a living soul. The purported progenitor of the human race, Adam, so-called first Adam. Does the being express based on those so-called genetics? Or does the individual, having experienced that within the context of a protracted experience of death, right? Do they then facilitate and eventually some of them, right, facilitate the resurrection of the risen, ascended Christ, or the I am within the dead flesh? See? And the Bible refers to that as the second Adam or the new Adam. And the only time the Bible mentions that, the term quickening spirit, says the first Adam was made a living soul. The second Adam or new Adam was made a quickening spirit. What is a quickening spirit? Quickening spirit is the highest value. The quickening spirit is, it cannot be defeated. The quickening spirit is victory, because any weapon that's formed against that spirit can't prosper, because the quickening spirit can always quicken its vibrations and its frequencies, and it can always vibrate beyond any attacks. And again, I understand this is associated with the Apostle Paul, but even a lying, thieving, treacherous scumbag can, is probably going to dress up their lies with some measure of truth, right? Talked about, the struggle is not against flesh and blood, because that's dead. See, It's against spiritual wickedness in high places. Well, what's spiritual wickedness? It's the lack of love. It's the lack of creation. It's the lack of authority. It's the lack of justice, right? It's it's everything antithetical to tolerance, love, acceptance, justice, value. It's everything that's antithetical. So when we see, oh, well, it turns out money is a debt instrument. Yeah, the dead money has no value in that way, right? It can't represent value. It's not possible. See? So that's what the render unto Caesar means. It has the same meaning as let the dead bury the dead, right? This is what this system of things, this is what the state of, that's its business. That's what it involves itself with. And it can only do that through the subversion of the creative force of what I am. And that is the vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions. And again, operating at a level of consensus. And, perhaps the most powerful, psyop or form of mind control is arguably the fact that the being, is socialized and grows up in these systems of things. And just the fact that all of this seems to be happening, that somehow lends it credence. It's like, well, actually, that's not logical at all. Any number of things could be dressed up in that way. Any number of, 1,000 people could go off to a field somewhere, on a piece of property and choose some arbitrary activities and engage in them at a level of consensus. Well, it doesn't make them appropriate. It doesn't then mean that those activities or actions are appropriate, right? It doesn't make them okay or desirable or correct, because what? Because it seems to be happening and everybody seems to be doing it. So what? So fucking, it doesn't mean anything. In a vacuum, that has no meaning. So this idea of, well, you have to do this, you have to earn a living. Motherfucker, what's a living? Tell me what a living is. Do you know what death is? I do. It's something that what I am has never and will never experience. That's what this realm, this is an imagining that these delusions and illusions could even be real for 1 second. See? Waking dreams, surrealistic, unreality, deja vu all over again. Right? That's what this is. That's what is happening. That's where the consensus is born out of, or that's what the consensus is born out of. And the moment I know what I am, now I, over time, begin to understand all of these things that I'm speaking on. And it won't do the listener really any good, except, maybe encourage them to undertake a process of growth and transformation and moving away, but only within their own so-called life, moving away from these consensuses. Because the human, as we see, has a strong desire to group up and click up. And even in seeking to, maybe being excited by some of these ideas and then saying, well, yeah, they could see the benefit potentially of such transformation and learning to get out of one's own way. But then the propensity of the human is to then find other like-minded humans to group up with. It's like, no, that's not the thing. The thing is to facilitate these transformative processes within the individual, because that's the only accessible meaning and power is physically located. If we're going to talk about the delusions and illusions of time, space, location, place, and then the present moment, now it's here, now it's gone, now it's here, now it's gone. Only within, right, that internal space, spiritually, mind, body, and spirit, that's the only possibility of the individual accessing meaning and power. There's nothing outside of the individual that's accessible when it comes to power and meaning, because this world doesn't have the ability or capacity to provide meaning or power. This realm is lack of meaning and lack of power. So when the individual directs their efforts and focuses outside of themselves, they guarantee that they will not experience meaning and they will not experience power. See? And in fact, that is, they will defeat themselves, which is, how does that happen? Well, if they are what I am, that is the only so-called unforgivable sin, which is to treat one's to treat one's blessing as if it were a curse. And what are people doing when they want to blame, air quotes, so-called God? Time after time, the royal we sees these avowed Christians. They don't talk to the criminal. They don't go talk to the Antichrist. They don't talk to antithesis, because they know antithesis doesn't have any power, right? There's no meaning to be found there. No, they go talk to, air quotes, so-called God and say, hey, air quotes, so-called God, why are you doing this to me? Why are you doing this to me? They get angry with God. They resent what they believe to be, air quotes, so-called God. Right? Thus proving that it can't possibly be what they think it is. Right? I'm talking worshiper and object of worship contained within the same space. Inside of me, the kingdom of, air quotes, so-called God is what? Within you. Air quotes, so-called God is what? Love. Well, love doesn't know anything about condition. So people say, well, do you mean conditional love, unconditional love, this type of love, that type of love? No, that's a phenomenon. Love is a phenomenon. And love doesn't know what condition is. It doesn't know what you're talking about. See? It doesn't know how to withhold. It cannot perform that. If you see something pretending to be love performing conditionally, right, or in other ways that aren't consistent with the nature of love, that's how you know it's not love. And this world can't provide anything that can pass for love. This world can't provide anything that can pass for tolerance, see, or abundance, or value, or meaning, or power. Only hollow illusions, see, whereby seemingly individuated beings agree via consensus to pretend as if this world has the capability for performing such things. See, it's imagined, it's pretend. It doesn't exist. It cannot touch what I am. It has never touched what I am. It will never touch what I am. And in order for the sacrifice to represent what Moloch demands, which is actual supreme value symbolically, it has to be that way. Now, I understand people will twist that into, well, Benton's saying that, specific things. It's like, well, what did Jesus say when accused of that in the court, the state of's court? He said, well, that's what you say. So that's a good enough answer from us. Well, that's what you say. I didn't say that. You said that. So what's there to actually do? Right. Well, and I can answer all of those questions. Now, the reality is, could I assist other people? Potentially, sure, but that's not the mission. The mission is to facilitate on an ongoing basis all of this happening within my dead flesh, see, within the context of these protracted experiences of death, where on some level, part of me being cool, calm, and collected, and my bowels moving in a healthy way. And again, I'm trying not to get too graphic with it, but what's happened in my guts today, in my intestines, that simply can't occur at the level of health and positive health, healing, and restoration. It can't occur without the being occupying certain spaces, emotionally, spiritually, with their thought process. Acceptance. Well, that's surrender. That's yin. See, or more correctly, it's probably a balance between the yin and the yang. See, we're so unbalanced in America and Western society. Everything almost is unbalanced towards yang or assertion, aggression, dominance, as I like to call it. And so, a lot of my own growth and evolution and change within the context of the dead flesh and this dead system of things has been through the mastery, working towards the mastery of the yin form, you know, acceptance, right? Uh, Surrender, regardless of, well, but I don't want to accept that. So what? What's that have? That's a preference. Everybody's got a preference. The preference is only important to the individual. Benton is fascinated with results. Benton, his entire life, has demonstrated a high level of effectiveness in the real world, or in this case, in the dead flesh. Once I have my sights set on a goal, I don't need to concern myself with what, well, I don't want it to be that way. Doesn't matter. Buddy, you're either going to do these things or you're not. Right? Benton either rises above or he doesn't. And I have. Bye.